hope so. Was I supposed to recite something? Well, I could.
You can do whatever you want.
That's interesting talking about Bashan, those wonderful forms. I discovered this one form, the high boon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I was telling Sarah that as a teenager in my early 20s, that in Berkeley, I had a Zen teacher, and I sat, and it was very important to me, and it still is in different ways. And I still practice forms of meditation, but not like that. But that's crazy, and you gotta be strong to do that.
You gotta love it.
Yeah, that's painful. But the wonderful, simple idea of writing a little prose diary entry or journal entry about the context of the poem, how it came into be, that he wrote this poem, and then just presents the poem. You know? Mm-hmm. And he'd already raised the haiku out of the sort of party game, thing that was existing, nature poems or whatever, into a high, at a level of art so shockingly high that it's undeniable by anybody. It's almost the equivalent of Shakespeare, I think, in English, in some ways. But I've been doing some of those. I don't know. Oh, I'm just talking about this because we were just. Sorry. I'll do this. Like, I'll go off on a tangent. I'll endlessly go off on tangents. I'll try to keep to the subject. We don't even know what the first one is yet, and I've already gone off on a tangent.
That's great. That's great. Well, just to back up, welcome. Thank you for coming. We're just going to talk to Franz today, and I have a series of questions. They're really general, so
my favorite.
if we don't keep to the topic, that's fine, and if we make it short, that's fine too. Whatever you want. So, and some of these questions they're for a very, very general audience. So, the first question is, what does it mean to make a poem?
Oh, I've thought a lot about that recently. It seems to become very simple to me recently. For me, it's simply a place, an improved actual place to go to walk around inside. And I experienced this very early in childhood, even maybe before writing, but then when writing started, it gave it a very concrete form in a strange way. Very early I had a sense of language as being a literal place, or as somehow doubling everything. If the infinite can be doubled, which it can't, it's an impossible mathematical proposition, but that's what it does. Language doubles the infinite. And then Rilke comes and he believes that for literally every phenomenon in the external world, there's a corresponding inner phenomenon. And what he means is language. It's all connected to language. There wouldn't be any inner life without language. There wouldn't be any thought. There's no thought without language. I don't know. What are we saying again?
What does it
Oh,
mean?
yeah. Well, I was reading, for me at first, it was a shield against the world. Now, you know that line in Joyce in Portrait of the Artist as a young man, burying my chalice safely through a crowd of foes. But it was a shield, and but it enriched everything. It made everything twice as good, too. It did both. It did everything. And to me, it was always associated almost with the sense of being in love. It was an identical sensation. And so I always responded to that image in Wallace Stevens about the inner paramour. there's other forms, like in Kabir, it's in there, the friend, you know, there's this, and in St. John Cross, there's this person in us that we could be, that we want to fall in love with, you know, and be, you know, and be with. We can never find it. No. Maybe some people do. I'd like to meet one. I'll shake hands sometime. To me, it was an improved, like Hart Crane said, I was promised an improved infancy. That's what it was. It was an improved reality. And a place. And I was reading, and Mark Roscoe said the exact same thing. He'd sit in front of a painting for hours, one of those brilliant, those light paintings, and he said, it's a place for me to go with, where I'm happy.
Great, thank you. This is the second question. What is the role of beauty in a poem? Or your
These
poem?
are general questions. Beauty, you'd have to ask an old question, wouldn't you? What's beautiful? What's beautiful? How do you define beautiful? The best way I ever saw it was Sappho saying, some people say, you know, like a herd of black horses running across the plains of the Samoth are beautiful. Some say a flotilla of warships heading out from port are beautiful. I say, whatever one loves is beautiful. Whatever you love, that's what is beautiful. That's, you have certain special, you have private places, and your ideal places you keep inside you, memories of times when you felt the way you're constantly in childhood having the experience of feeling like you're just about to see through to the way things really should be. It's real evident right away that they're not. But you can still see how they should be. And you still feel it's unfair that they're not. And you still have, that may be part of it. I don't think it's just puberty, you know. That thing where that light goes out of children's faces when they're like 11 or something. And it's the saddest thing in the world. And, that may be part of it. It's not just the hormonal thing. It's like also something else. You're starting to doubt. You're starting to fail to. You're starting to compromise. With to settle for less.
Okay, here's a third general question. Well, this is a little more specific. How do sound and vision intersect in your poems when you're writing them? Like sound.
Oh yeah, it's those are very fundamental. For me, I mean, it wouldn't be going on at all without something like that. I mean, it's one of the there's a few major things that happen that keep obsessed with it, you know, and one of them is the musical quality. If you have that in your body, we're talking about being wired in bad ways, you know. You can get wired in good ways too. And my father listened to that man. It's funny, sometimes people who come from very uneducated, very working class background, like my father, become obsessively learned, you know, when they learn all this stuff themselves. And he was so enraptured with classical music, and he would make me sit and listen to it, you know. You want to do other things when you're a little boy. Or then sit and listen to "Thou art a soul in bliss, but I am bound upon a wheel of fire, with mine own tears do scald like molten lead." You know, you like want to get down on your knees and like I did once. I crawled out of the room on my knees. Didn't even hardly notice. tried to be a musician. And music is, I think poetry is a lot closer to music than it is to prose. It's so mathematical, very much more like music. It has an it both is an object that's still and stands still in time, like an object, a painting, a visual object. It's an object, a thing on a page. And at the same time, it flows in time. If you read it, it will take a certain number of seconds to read, like a piece of music. And it has beats and rhythms. And spoken poetry was inconceivable to people until quite recently. The less Beethans. After that, maybe. Nobody. It's like if Bob Dylan got up and just said the lyrics of a song and didn't sing. They sang. They're called lyric poems because they were sung. They're the lyrics of songs. But the Iliad was sung. It was a melody. No one knows what it is.
What was the first poem you ever wrote, and what were the circumstances?
It's so cool. I don't know. No, it was a very, one day to the next thing, I woke up. All I know is I was staying up in this place in Northern California. I used to go when I was a teenager. And a feeling, a very, very powerful, eerie kind of sense of being drawn to get up, and this ecstasy, that you feel sometimes at that age, and walking in the morning. And I feel like I maybe never feel again. But that's not true. I do. Just talking about it, I can feel it again. But and I just the impulse to sing, like this, to find some way of responding, like you're with poetry, you're really close. You're never far from the most ancient impulses in human beings, which are to say back something to the universe, to be like so much awe that you have to say something back, and in some form, in one way or another. Or Whitman said, "How could I, in the sunrise, how could I survive the sunrise if I did not always constantly send sunrise out of me?" I don't know. See, by the time I finish trying to answer, I forget what you asked me.
What was the first poem?
Oh, well, then I went out and wrote this. It had 7 lines. I can almost remember it word for word, and if anybody were ever to see it, I'd have to kill them. But I thought it was,
How old were you?
I had an experience like, whoa, I want to do that again. And it took me another 5 years before I wrote something I felt was a poem. I remember when I was about 19, I finally wrote something one day in college. I went to college over after many misadventures, and in between, I remember the very first time that I wrote something I knew was a poem. I went, shit. I went over to my teacher's house, and he went, yep, you did. And, but I didn't know how. I knew I had done it, but I didn't know how I did it. That took another 15 years to figure out. That was just the start.
So can you guess how old you were when you wrote that first 7 lines?
15.
15.
That kept me going.
Yeah.
For 4 or 5 years. I believed that I was going to have that experience again. And I didn't have it for all those at that time, but I believed that it would again. It was too real. I knew it couldn't be an illusion.
can you talk about, you were talking about translation, well, you were talking about Basho, but can you talk about translation, how you feel about it?
Great joy. It starts out as being a way to read a poem in another language most closely. If you're fortunate enough to have the language that the poem is in, it's the very closest you can. I mean, it's like dismantling a little watch or an engine or something and putting it back together and find out how it's made. And I can imagine no better way for someone sitting alone in their room trying to figure out what we're talking about, about a poem, what a poem is in translation. It's wonderful because you know that there's going to be a solution at the end. You just have to get there. It reminds me of geometry or something. It's beautiful like that. Like you just have to get there. It's there. But it's a great way to love, a poem you love, to experience it as closely as possible. And you have an impulse, a natural impulse to want to translate it after a while. I believe only certain poems can be translated. No, translation is impossible. It's totally chaotic, in the first place, to do it. But we're glad that certain people do. And very not glad that other people do it. But it grieves me, for example, that generations of people think Stephen Mitchell's Rilke is what Rilke sounds like. That causes me physical, terrible pain. It really does.
Can I just follow up, Katara? The first work of yours I knew were the translations of René Char. And I'm just kind of curious what drew you to René Char back then when you were
that was a weird story. I just loved. I had come up against poets like Hart Crane, and he's the one that comes to mind where I felt like I was learning to read all over again. There was literally a night when I suddenly could read him, like the moment when you're a child when you suddenly can read. And then I was looking for higher levels of that, and Char was really the highest sort of level of the sort of lyrical absolute language, more than Mallarmé, who seemed simple-minded to me. Char is like Rimbaud as an adult. It's great, It's like he does all the things. He derives very, very much from Rimbaud, but he's an adult being Rimbaud. He's an adult Rimbaud. It's irresistible, and he's so charming. But it's the same thing. Like what? Like I would show. I don't really know French, and I would get friends who were fluent. As Urban said, get someone who's fluent and get a poet and put them together. And it's like one very good method for translation. It's an excellent one, and which I've taken part in, and which works very well, and is very exciting. But and in the end, you don't harm the original just because you've tried to do some botched, version of it of your own in your own language. The original's still there. But it's great. So it's a wonderful joy to translate.
Okay, talk about frustration, a time when you experience a failure of language, which.
That sounds like about the first 40 years of my life. No, I'd say till my late 40s I would have described myself as feeling perpetually almost that way. No, I had my moments, but it had become a total suicide mission by that point. I mean, it's just, in a way there was something kind of that I hated to lose about that. So that got interrupted in an odd way. But it was just there's this, I don't know, there's this, I keep here thinking of this. All my life I've thought about this line in Rilke's prose somewhere where he says, the poem is the result of having been in terrible danger. And that I can, there's just no other way for me to describe, and then having this ecstatic sort of triumph, overcoming, you know. It's the way I've always experienced it. I've never been able to quit doing it, you know. I always have to keep going until my big myth is Jacob, you know, and the angel, you know, wrestling the angel. I will not let you go until you bless me. I love that. That's enough.
Okay, this is taking a different direction. What advice would you give high school students who want to write poetry?
If something, the obvious would be to do something else right away. No, I think that if people understand that they just have a love of language and it's just some, like the way I like paintings or something. I don't have to be like a painter or a fanatically, you know, it's my life, you know, my breaths. I don't think, it's wonderful that people have a love, people have always had a love of poetry. Should be it was a very popular, and in many cultures it's a very popular, like wildly popular art form still. And except in certain crude, like, you know, hapless former first world country, you know, like, I don't know. There are places in the world where there's a great prestige in saying I'm a poet, and in saying it here, it's like saying, never mind. It's not. It's like saying something that I can't find a polite way to put, so I'm just not gonna.
So your advice would just be to them just to love it, read it.
Well, you just tell them to go read tell them to read the famous, the old Aunt Rilke, Letters to a Young Poet, you know. It turns out to be, he means it. Rilke really meant it. He said, if you can ask yourself, will I die if I don't do this? Will my soul die? Then you better do it. And if you can't say that, then you better not do it. That's all. I think it's that radical. Doesn't mean you can't love it. Loving it is a gift in itself. To have a love for poetry, my God, it's like just to love to read is such a gift already. But oh God, how wonderful it would be just to read and not have to write. It ruins writing. It ruins reading. It does. It ruins reading completely.
So here's a pretty specific question. So I know you know these famous lines by Adorno, to write a poem after Auschwitz is barbaric. And then Jerome Rothenberg said back, after Auschwitz, there is only poetry.
Yeah, that's a very old, that's an old argument thing that's been argued for so long. And it should be, and it always will be, and it always has been in some way. Like, it's the question of our higher selves, and our lower selves, and can we live like this in this higher world that we can imagine? And there have been periods in history when people have lived up to that for brief periods of time. Ask me again. I know it's the Adorno thing.
But I guess
the famous Adorno thing.
The question is there anything that poetry can't approach?
I think that real art, in whatever form it takes, if we use that generic term, and poetry is often used to embody. Poesis means to make, create. And you can't repress that impulse in human beings any more than you can the impulse to stay alive, to live. It's part of if we didn't have this joy going through us, we'd all kill ourselves. It's hard enough not to anyway. But sometimes, but as you all know, but it's poetry is connected to and linked the word, the logos. Heraclitus used that, and then first the word, but it means really sentience itself, consciousness. To realize you're a conscious being, that you're the consciousness of nature, perhaps. That your nature become conscious of itself. And to be the first person to realize these things. It's terrible, it's staggering. And you have 2 centuries where you have all of the main thinkers of ancient Greece that established everything that we live by in a period of no more than 400 years. And we need to reconnect. We have this terrible need to reconnect with that feeling of we are here for some awesome, illustrious purpose, not just to be a slave and to just exist, and that's, I think, corny as it sounds, a lot of what writing poetry, means, trying to do any art. But then I always come across as so pedantic or about it. I really mean it. Why you don't have to be a master at it. Just if you it can be something you like. You don't have to be like this monomania. Nothing else, matters in your life. Like me, that would happen to me. I mean, I just literally, it would just be the only place, the only thing I had, and that's crazy. See, I always had everything backwards. I thought if I suffered enough, then I would have earned a poem or something. It's absurd. No, I found out, if I fixed myself and if I was happy, then I would write something. Real, heavy duty, realizations like that when you're 50 years old. I've come to love being alone. I've come to love writing. I've come to love, I hated them. Jesus Christ. I would do anything to escape from writing, and I couldn't. Wherever I found myself, it was waiting for me, usually on the back of a matchbook in a bar or something. I don't know how many books were written on them. My friend Charles Simic, who's my mentor or something, I started writing to him when I was 19. I used to go visit him. Said, Franz, your major ambition is to write a epic on the back of a matchbook. That was weird, because my father used to say about Robert Bly, his main ambition is to turn the Iliad into a haiku.
So, the next question is just about your work and what's the
That's not work, that's fun.
Okay, your poetry. What's the future? What's going on next?
God, didn't I do enough in your head?
Maybe that's the answer.
I feel like that sometimes. Haven't I done enough, for Christ's sake? It's like I just have this book, and I'm never going to write a better book than this. You reach a peak, there's and that, I don't know, I wrote 2 more after that I'm one's done. Another one's almost finished. The next one after this will be of interest. I don't think, it could be of equal interest in some ways. I brought it. I could read something from it if you want, but
That'd be great.
I'm very happy about it mainly because of its title, F. I cannot tell you how happy it makes me. It will make me smile on my deathbed. The thought of people walking around by the Coop or somewhere, or the Harvard bookstore, and seeing it's an F. F is a very potent letter in our language. It just is a pun because I always sign my name that way, and my friends all know me by that. But it means other things too, doesn't it? It's the meaning of just F, fail, like school. But it's also like, fuck you. There's all kinds of things that go through your mind, sort of kaleidoscopically. I like that idea. Isn't that what a good image should do? Yeah, it is. It's the most structured of. Well, I've tried to do this before, but failed. No, I tried it a couple times. It didn't. It worked out more. It didn't work out that well. Nothing I do works out that well, but I have my moments. And this one I think really has a better symmetry. It has 4 sections. The second section is Mariella isn't. No, she's not here, right? The Mariella Griffer, who is nearby in Grosse Pointe, has done some beautiful chapbooks of mine. I wish I had more, but this is one she did. That's one section of this book. It's one long poem. It's a 20-page poem. But the first section has about 12 or 13 poems. The second section is this long poem. There's a section of about 14 poems that I rewrote from the past, from 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I got permission from places where they had appeared in obscure places, and I got permission to rewrite, and did I? I mean, they turned into, the transformation of them was phenomenal. And it was a lot of fun to do. And then the last section, that's another just 12 or 14, 13 poems. So it looks nice. I'll read you the Haibun that I did. Let me just read that, okay? I think I put that in here. And I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's just, I just love his, he's one of those people in literature that are not literary at all, and that are more like friends, like, you feel like you hear the way they spoke, the way you know a friend's tone of voice and how they speak, the Gospels have some of that quality. There's this person, and you feel there's really somebody that they're trying to imitate how he talks. There's a sense of a real person speaking, a personality, and it's so. His is so adorable, that, and the humility is so real, and humility is the infinite power for an artist. So, I have to find it in the table of contents, which has no numbers, of course. Then before I read that, here's one I just finished that was kind of a rewritten from something a while back, but we were talking about, we were talking about Renee Char. We'll take that up again after this is over, because I realized I'll do that. My mind just goes to something else. But I wanted to write like a Char-like thing, and I wrote this, I don't know, one night I wrote this, it's like one sentence, it's called Spell. Some fish for words from shore, while others, lacking in such contemplative tact, like to go wading in up to their chins through a torrent of bone-chilling diamond, knife-raised, to freeze frame, incarnadined and bid as with hermetic wand flow on again, ferociously, translucently, name writ in river. That would be what I learned to call the lyrical absolute. That's the place where language goes off into literally, into being meaning, into being just music. And then whatever it randomly says at the same time, which turns out to be, it's really strange sometimes. Anyway, I know where they are. They're just, for a while I would read them every morning. It just kept me, it maybe, it's the only way I could. Yeah, it's just three of them, they're short. And this is what I was talking about, the name of your artist is what?
Icky.
Well, he says in this one, in this Haibun by Basho from 1692, I am acquainted with a Kyoto monk by the name of Unchiku, who once did a painting. Maybe it was a self-portrait, I don't know. It showed a monk with his face turned away. He asked me if I would write something on it, so I set down these words. You are more than 60 years old, and I am almost 50. We are both shadows in a dream. Pindar uses the same image somewhere. A shadow in a dream. The same dream, maybe. Then, as if talking in my sleep, I added my poem. Turn and look back at me. I am so lonely. Cold fall night. Second one is, as the chill rain of early winter began falling desolately over everything, I sought warmth and company at a roadside inn. Allowed to dry my soaked clothes by the fire, I was further comforted for a time by the innkeeper, who tactfully listened to me relate some of the troubles I encountered on the road. Suddenly it was evening. I sat down under a lamp, taking great care with them as I produced my ink and brushes and began to write. Recognizing my work, he solemnly requested that I consider composing a poem in honor of our brief meeting in this world. At an inn, I am asked for identification. Traveler, let that be my name. The first winter rain. And the last one is, wherever I travel, wherever I happen to find myself, I am not from there. In fact, the whole world is just such a place to me. I've spent the past 6 or 7 months on the road, a nocturnal traveler who has survived so far many devastating illnesses as I made my way onward. I found the more alien I came to seem to myself, the more I missed beloved faces, lifelong friends, and aiding students, until my steps were drawn irresistibly back toward the outskirts of Edo, to be present-day Tokyo. And sure enough, day after day they appeared, coming to sit in the small hut of a poor man and talk to me. I had nothing to offer in return except my poem. I am still alive, but why? Silvery grass that withers at the touch of the snow. This is that will have to be put on the list of never read them in public poems. I have a whole long list of poems I learned from teaching. I would read a certain poem, and I start to realize, oh fuck, and I have to stop and do that thing men do because they think they'll die if they cry, and it's horrible. Like, I'm going to have to strangle myself to death if this doesn't stop. It's second only to the shame of failing to live longer than everyone you know. But that's, and then it'll switch to this. I'll just read one other to show you. It'll switch to, this is a prose thing. You all know when you spend time in bars, there are certain perennial sayings like last call for alcohol. I have a prose piece called, you don't have to go on, but you can't stay here. Within my heart is a bright ceilingless place, and I have been there. Evening or dawn, first stars or last, I couldn't tell you. Hidden path through the forest, my height, which gives way between one step and the next to the dunes. The dunes. I was thinking of out in the Cape province. It's coming back to me, endless identical dunes in their muted other planetary light. I turn around, the trees are gone. This is where it begins. It's the same every time. Mirror, mirror in the mirror, now who's living with a gun to his head? Endless hallway of doors without numbers, without doorknobs, for that matter. What can you do but keep walking toward the distant pinpoint of light, praying that it doesn't go out, or the blood-dyed thread prove too short? May silver scissors sleep. I am so tired, and I don't know why. I can't go back. I would never make it. Besides, there's no time. I am late, unforgivably late for the wedding. The rhyme of the one who has actually been there but cannot remember a thing, and the one who vividly remembers a place she has never been. Late for the kiss, the kill, the woods owl come home at last, the embrace of two people on opposite shores of the ocean, of things as they should be, divided by things as they are. And talk about being at the right place at the right time. I have always been there. It's going to end now, no matter how cunningly the route, how agile the evasive maneuver, bang. And so what? So what if there is nothing left of me but this shattered wraith or facsimile of the person who continues, even now, to go by my name? I made it, and that is the one thing I will not be denied. And I urge you to give this some thought. You have a mind until you use it. At this point, that's a play on a beautiful line in my friend C.D. Wright's great new book. What is it called? C.D. Wright's new book? One with Others. And a woman says, you have a life until you use it. At this point, I can barely string together two coherent thoughts or get my shirt buttons in the right holes. But I am still here, aren't I? I ask if I am here, therefore I am here. Or there's no one to ask. And it's very important, I know. I feel I am at present at the hour I was born for, destination and origin in one. This is the part where I'm supposed to wake up, and I do not wake up. Sudden wind through the leaves that aren't there, the very air turning greener from one instant to the next, and an absolute stillness, even the birds silenced, the birds who aren't there with their eyes closed, and night come in broad daylight. For the Father is coming, and he is an American, and that he is an American is not something we can simply assume anymore. The tiger, the whirlwind, the unanswering sky, as well as the caryatid who has fallen beneath its stone for good. He lays me out asleep, and plunging his hand in my flesh, as in mercury, as in melted down mirror, he pulls the heart from its socket, and truly it has been hurting me most of my life. A new heart is set in its place, incorruptible, heart of the one with no name, or a new name, one so conspicuously alien. I'm afraid it is bound to cause no end of strife, especially at recess, at the school for vicious young primates, prematurely preoccupied with unpremeditated ejaculation. By now, the wound in my chest's healing over like water into which a large stone has been dropped. Still silver water or wide wind-blown water with shimmering paths beginning and ending at his feet. Love itself, or love unreturned. Stars, progenitor, also the towering braggart who stomped a broken joke to win a bet with the devil. Meanwhile, Abraham, knife raised, is let off the hook at the last minute, and later on, my mysterious Lord sends his own child to slaughter. Now there is a book I keep meaning to read again, cover to cover, the way I did as a boy. If I could only get out of bed, if only I could break these restraints which, after all, aren't really there. This is where I can always be found, I regret to say, repeating from beginning to end the terrific reasons for being alive, and it's getting us nowhere. How about a story? There once was a man who dreamed he walked to heaven, and bending down to pick a tiny eye-blue flower from the grass, he woke to find himself holding that flower in his hand. I think I know just how he felt. Only now I appear to be moving. I am flying at incalculable speeds which continue increasing until finally there is no sensation of motion at all. I am traveling away from my body in widening rings. That's from, of course, Samuel Taylor Coleridge's wonderful little passage in his journal. What if a man were to pass through paradise in a dream, and as a token that he had actually been there, be given a blue flower that when he woke he found he was holding in his hands? What then? He said, what then?
Thank you. There's one more question. So I said last night, we were talking about Ikkyu, whose name means one pause, and in his time period in Japan, 15th century, everybody read poetry and knew poetry, and you really weren't considered a human being if you didn't.
Right, it was more popular, but then we have to remember that that doesn't necessarily mean it's at its peak when it's a very popular film.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, because the question I had was, what could we do now to make that more the case in America? But maybe you're saying...
I don't know the answer to this, because I know there are cultures in which poetry, as I said, has great prestige, and there are cultures where it's almost, to say you're a poet is almost to admit to some sort of felony, like ours. I don't know. I used to think the Russians always, they always had it over on us because they killed all their poets. But we don't do that here. We found like a much better way to silence them. It's so cunning. It's beautiful. It's just, you can say anything you fucking please. And we just won't pay attention. And we'll just starve you to death. Man, when you're a Russian and you said something, they listen. And they kill you. So, I don't know. Which is a better place to be? I always thought it would be wonderful to be a Catholic in China. But I know it's there's something racist about that desire, I know, but I have this fantasy. Things like that, like being in a real situation where it's a danger to where your love is purified by the fact that you put your life at risk. And I was always conscious of being willing to do that for writing, and it took me so long not to distinguish between writing and religion, thinking writing was a religion, which is so stupid. But there is something that is religion, or whatever that word we use. And some religions, I use the term really loosely. Even in a more, even it can even mean psychological thing. But I felt always. I never remember a time when I didn't feel. And it's not something I'm like bragging about. It's something that absolutely horrifies me. Really, I can hardly bring myself to think about it. But I was quite conscious many times that I was not going to do anything else. I was going to die, and was dead serious and considered myself. Used that concept, the already dead concepts, often in my life, and it worked real good too. Something takes care of us. If you throw yourself off the cliff, you are caught. But not very many people do, but a lot of people claim to.
Okay.
Does that mean enough?
That's it.
Man, aren't I articulate? Like, I never realized that. Because I'm alone all the time. I just talk to myself in a grunt. So grunt.